Good morning.
Good morning. Happy
Morning.
Thursday.
Yes, happy Thursday. Today's a beautiful day. And I think that, a lot of people are online and there's
Yep.
challenges here and there and everywhere about showing up, but we showed up. And we are so delighted to bring our brother, onto our platform, Chef Johl Whiteduck Ringuette. I think that's, anyway, it's a real honor. I'd like to just acknowledge everyone that's here with us again today, who continue to show up and support Grandmother's Voice, Halton Catholic District School Board, our community members, and everyone that is just is wanting to learn more and more about the history of our nation, the people that were here, our ancestors, and healing. Because every time I meet someone, I feel like another piece of me feels, healed. And I don't know any other way to say that. So wonderful. Thank you so much. Speak Up and Empower, Grandmother's Voice, the school boards that support everything that we do. And just to say before we pass it over to Chef Johl, Grandmother's Voice is a unified group of Indigenous people. It's a grassroots organization. We're completely guided by our ancestors, spirit, the grandmothers, our grandfathers, uncles, and man, are people coming? Like being able to share this platform and share stories and share their essence. So many people are just reaching out and saying how thankful they are. And so I just wanted to take that moment to acknowledge all of the energies, Mother Earth, all the energies that are supporting this work that we're doing. And it's not even work. This is not work. Living should not be work, right? So Sherry, I love you, and I have to say, thank you for this space for this moment, because I'm feeling really loving right now, because my uncle passed on to, he journeyed home last night, and I guess that this is where it's coming from. And I just wanted to express, the gratitude and the support that we're receiving here. And Joel, maybe this is because every time I talk to you, you are just such a kind soul and spirit. And to know that there are men out there like you, just doing so much wonderful things, so many wonderful things. My uncle was like that. He just walked into a room and he looked like love. And you remind me of that. And Sherry, you too. Thank you so much. Thank you for that time, and all the best to my family members.
Thank you, Jody.
Sherry.
Yeah. No, we're just really thrilled to have to continue these speaker series. It has been life-changing for an awful lot of people, and the comments that we keep on reading in the videos and things like that has been really, really moving for me, and not only for me, but like what Jody said, is just bringing our stories and our ceremonies and our learning and our teaching to this platform. And so we're just so thrilled to, Joel, that you're here, and we've done some projects with you in the past, and and so thrilled that you're here, and I know that we're going to continue doing more projects in the future, because we've got lots of really amazing things that are happening in our community, which is just fantastic. So I'll let you take it away, Joel, if you want to introduce yourself, and Jody and I will be in the back room. So
thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Jody. Thank you so much for those precious words. It is a real honor to be here today, and I have the opportunity as a public speaker to come to many opportunities, many times where I get a chance to speak and as a guest speaker. But what I want to say is Grandmother's Voices, this is something incredible, because when I met Jody and I knew Sherry previously, I had no idea the sort of love, which are the precious words I'm thanking you for, Jody, that you were going to bring into my life. Because bringing the grandmothers together and all of our aunties, all of our sisters, and giving us an opportunity to heal in this way and share our gifts and lift each other up, and opening with those words, hearing you, Jody, say to your sister that you love her. Those are the words I woke up with this morning in Anishinawbe, Moen Dejagan is how know it. And that is to say, I love you. And I get filled with love. I was given that gift through my mother. My mother is Molly Whiteduck. She left us through a fatal car crash in 2002, which really altered my path in a really difficult way, of course, when we lose our loved ones. But of course, learning, this just drove me towards my teachers and drove me towards ceremony to begin to realize that I had a responsibility and an opportunity to create a relationship with my mother in the spirit world. And she was actually in my dream, not last night, but the night before. So since I had an opportunity through ceremony, which I did with Mark Thompson, who is also the teacher who sent me on this journey. So for those of you who know me, you'll have read in a bio somewhere, you've heard me talk about Mark Thompson. He was an incredibly gifted healer who worked at Anishinawbe Health. And many, many years ago, I went to see him for many years until he passed in 2009. And I've had an opportunity to create a relationship with Mark as well. But Mark told me I had this gift. He told me, you know, the work you're doing at Aboriginal Legal in Gladue Court, that's really important healing work for the community. But you're coming to a point where you need to pass over those gifts from Gladue, help train somebody else, and go on your journey. And your journey is bringing back the Anishinawbe food diet. That was a really wonderful experience to hear that. And at the same time, I was kind of bewildered. Yes, I worked in the food industry. I never told Mark that. Mark only knew me from working in Aboriginal justice, because I would go to him regularly for spiritual guidance, because I found the work really, really difficult, working inside the justice system, the prison system, and how super oppressive and, ineffable it is to talk about even the amount of our brothers and sisters who are in custody, and the way that system's set up to oppress us. So it took a great deal of work to get through those times, and I did that for the better part of a decade. And then in 2005, when Mark told me I had this gift, I began to think about what he told me to do. And he told me, to go register a business and to start looking and sourcing the food. And I've been working in the food industry since I was 15 years old. And so I had a lot of experience. And I grew up, if you've seen my bio as well, you know that I grew up north of North Bay. My grandmother's from Nippissing. And my father used to bring us to his hunt camps. My family built hunt camps when they were teenagers, and later on when he was an older individual, we had a separate hunt camp, just small little log cabins that we would go to. So I grew up there, and my parents are the ones who taught me all the things I knew about food growing up as a young child on the land with them, going fishing, hunting, trapping, learning how to clean rabbits at a very young age, berry picking with our mother, which is like incredibly difficult work. If you've actually picked wild berries, I pick cultivated ones too, but cultivated ones are a lot easier to pick and harvest than wild berries, because wild berries are so small and they're so full of that love and heart medicine that we were just talking about. So today I'm here to bring you some information about my journey with food as medicine for the spirit, because that's what sent me on this journey. Mark Thompson, Anishinawbe teacher and healer from Winnipeg, who used to come to Toronto, told me that was my gift, and I followed that gift, and I followed the things that Mark gave me as guiding principles for NishDish. So some of you have heard about NishDish Marketeria and Catering, and I've been running that business and operating it infrequently while working full-time and raising my kids in Toronto since 2005. But then in 2017, with a ton of help, I had a friend offer financial support and physical support, because in between that journey, I got struck by a TTC bus on my bike, which is why you see me standing and kind of rocking. I have to keep moving because things all tend to seize up. So I'll be sitting down and moving throughout this talk. But part of what really helped me on that journey are the plants. So I went from sourcing the food and creating a clientele base, and really I've certainly gotten recipes and all kinds of knowledge from many knowledge keepers, and I'll be talking about a lot of them today. But one of the really important books I want to share with you is this lovely book. And if you've seen me talk before, I've certainly held this book up many times. This is Native Indian Wild Game, Fish, and Wild Foods Cookbook, but it is put together by Lovesick Lake Native Women's Association. And so the proceeds go to their association. And this book, just incredible. I mean, you have everything from our traditional foods. You see raccoon. I've never tasted raccoon, but I hope to get the opportunity one day too. Rabbit for sure.
Joel,
Venison meat, yes.
sorry to interrupt you. I don't know if it's there's some kind of static happening, not all the time. So I don't know. Maybe your energy is so amazing that every time you get close to the computer, but there's some static.
Maybe.
I don't know. Let's just. I don't know. It stopped now. Now it's stopped. No, come closer. Sherry, what do you think it is? We're sitting here going, what is that static? But I'm telling you, it's probably all your energy because there's no static now. So go ahead. Sorry.
Going again. But I wanted to share this because this is where we first started off with Bannock. This is the recipe I share with a lot of people. It's called this Shuswap Bannock. And of course, you know, the Shuswap people are from BC. And this particular recipe has blueberries in it, which I love, but a really simple recipe. But when we're talking about traditional foods, there's a lot of things to talk about. And if we don't talk about the history, then I would be remiss for sure to not cover some of the history. And I know it's really hard talks, and we know that. We know how painful it can be to talk about the traumas of the past, but that's the stuff we need to heal. And that's what I've been doing through the medicine of the food is how I've learned to heal myself. So bannock is a wonderful food, and we have wonderful memories of it, and we love the smell of bannock, and I totally get that. I still bake bannock in NishDish, but I take it in small increments. And the reason I'm here to share that with you today is that we're going to talk about our ancestral knowledge of the plants and the plants that were here, and plant clans and animal clans, and what our ancestors brought for us and brought forth, and all of that is to do with the food. And the thing is that bannock is made from wheat, and wheat wasn't here. So wheat came here in the 1880s through a company called Red Fife, and it was brought here by the colonizers, by the British, after they spent a great deal of time removing all the buffalo, and that was millions of buffalo. A lot of the settlers were actually paid to wipe out the buffalo, and that was to take our source of life and our spiritual relationship with the land and with the buffalo away from the people, to essentially destroy the people. That was the purpose of that. And so it's really important that we remember that, and we do everything in our power, because that's the healing journey, is to do everything we can in each day, whether that's through prayer, because prayer is so powerful, whether that's through acknowledging the plants and creating your relationship with the plants, which is a lot about what I'm going to talk about today. Because if you're really interested in land-based knowledge, you can find a lot of books, and of course we've got all kinds of knowledge keepers, and we're going to talk about all of my knowledge keepers and the people who've helped me, because I didn't arrive on my journey overnight. It took many decades, and so I'm here today to share with you just a few of the things that I've had the opportunity to learn about. This book by Tismal Crow talks really powerfully about his relationship with plants and how to heal yourself through our plant knowledge. And so when I'm talking about the wheat plant, it was brought from somewhere else. So the reason I have to talk to you about that is that inside our stomachs, Indigenous people don't have the enzyme to digest that wheat. So I'm asking you, if you're eating a lot of wheat, to try to eat more minimal amounts of it. And if you can eat gluten-free wheat or 00 flour, that stuff's a little more easy for us to digest. And so that mixes up the gut flora in our stomachs that help us keep our health. Everything is created through our health and our gut flora. And if you mess that up, it causes all kinds of different degenerative disorders later on. As you build your immune system, as you build your health, this is what gets really degenerated. So it's a hard story, but it's an important story to talk about the flower and the plants that we did have and how we can go back to them. So that's honestly my life journey, is to get back to the flowers we had. And we were making our own bread. We were making fantastic breads. We had all kinds of different flowers, and those flowers we need to find again and source them. So there are things like, corn flour for sure, about rice flour, which would be wild rice flour. You've certainly heard about different nuts that we created flowers from. You've probably heard about, where's that book? This flower, which is the cattail. And cattail, as you know, is everywhere. And the reason this medicine is so powerful is when you think about our relationship with the plants, you can just think about a really basic thing. So let's talk about the Anishinawbe people, because I'm Anishinawbe and I'm Algonquin. And as I journey through my story, I'm going to tell you little pieces about myself, because if you've been following your ways, at some point you've heard about the contraires, that's the French word, then you'll also know that word may apply to someone that that you're listening to right now. So you're going to hear things in a little different way than you normally hear them. So what I'm talking about right now, to stay on topic, is this flower. And this flower is called the cattail. And you've seen this. You know that it looks like a sort of a long brown plant. And I wish I would have bookmarked it, but I usually find it right away. And the cattail, what we used to do is harvest the roots. And we also used to get the pollen off it. And this is how we ground it up, and this is how we made our own flour. And so there are other flowers that I'm going to talk to you about a bit. Here it is here. This is the cattail, and this is the cattail, and here we have a recipe called cattail on the cob. And you can make cattail pastries. And from the cattail spikes, you use the spikes, you use the water, and you can use butter. Some of these are contemporary versions of adding different things into the food to create yummy recipes. So I want to bring that knowledge to you, because I'm starting with talking about our relationship with the plants. So a very, very important plant that I've been communing with, praying with, talking to, learning how to listen to, is a plant that's begun to heal my journey. I told you I was hit by a TTC bus. I still have all kinds of injuries from that. I'm very, very grateful that I lived through that and that I'm alive to continue doing some of my work. Most of my work now is training. I can't do repetitive work or heavy lifting at all. But I have people that help, and this is how we get the food out to you. So if you've listened or heard a little bit about NishDish, you know that in 2019, we won Best Caterer of the City. And I'm really, really proud to tell you that we were listed as Toronto Star Best Caterer of 2019. We were nominated and won that award. The other thing that happened a little bit before that, when I told you we opened NishDish in 2017, a lot of you were there if you're from Toronto, because there was 800 people outside the door. When we opened the doors for the grand opening, CBC was there. They documented the whole thing. Imagine me looking down the street and the traffic couldn't get through. And I got a call from the city saying, you got to make sure the streets are clear because you don't have a permit for this huge gathering. You only have a sidewalk permit. Because I didn't know 6, 7, 800 people were going to come. I thought maybe 100 over the course of the night. But we had over 800 people, and it got documented as the largest grand opening of any restaurant in the history of Toronto. And that's because of the Anishinawbe people's food. Our community came out to support that. It shows the love and the interest and the support of the community. And it shows the necessary desire of people wanting to ally with us. They want to know who we are, people who are non-Indigenous, and they want to understand what is our food, what is our culture. And a lot of times there isn't an opportunity for people who are non-Indigenous to understand what that is. So NishDish really provided that learning hub. And so a bunch of other things we did out of NishDish is we created Indigenous gardens. And we did that because someone brought me seeds. And the people that brought me the seeds, those seeds came from Cayuga, the Cayuga people of 6 nations. And they brought them right while we were renovating NishDish. And I remember when I accepted these seeds, I remember thinking, what a responsibility I have now. How am I going to run the restaurant and run these gardens? So right at that time, I had created the curriculum for the first Indigenous youth culinary arts program called Ojibwakan. And Ojibwakan means the roots. And so we want to remember that word because we all have roots and we all want to go back and figure out who are we. There's been a huge amount of dislocation in our community for all kinds of reasons, lots to do with government policy and how the Canadian government impacted our lives and their decision making through the Indian Act, and of course the legacy of the residential school system and the 60s and 70s scoop, and it continues to go on and on about the institutionalization of our people. And that's where all this dislocation happens. And that's why I love having these opportunities to talk, because there's so many of us that get on here and speak about who we are. Like I'm Anishinawbe, I'm also Algonquin. Those are on my mother's side. On my father's side, my father's mixed. He's French, English, and also has some Mohawk. But I was raised by my mother, and so a lot of my teachings are Anishinawbe. Hearing the static again?
Yeah, you know what it is? It's around your voice. So I'm just wondering if you could just like wipe your microphone. I know you said it's like clear, but it's like only when you speak on your end. So when I'm talking, there's no static, but when you speak, it's static. So I don't know if you want, do you know where your microphone is on your computer? Where is your computer? Is it up or down?
This is my desktop, and it's up, and the mic is going to be connected with this here.
Oh, I wonder. I'm on right now, so there's no. So why don't you just talk a little bit, and I might have to sit on here with you.
The mat I'm standing on, rocking on, if that's what you're hearing.
No, but that's, you know what we'll do is I'll minimize myself. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Joel. Like I just don't want people to hang up. If let's do this.
Started.
Let's try it.
Okay, how is it now?
Go ahead. Just yeah.
So
tell me a little bit about yourself.
So what we were talking about is our relationship to the plants and how I arrived working in the gardens. I created a culinary arts program for Native youth, and it was called Ojibwakan. And we took 10 Native youth and we brought them back to the land, and we did a 20-week program with teaching them about so many things, much like I talked about wheat when it came here in the 1880s with red fife, how it took over the land, and it was a new invasive plant that got brought into our diets. Of course, we know through the reservation systems in the Indian Act that the first forefather, which was Prime Minister, wow, I just lost his name, Prime Minister, very first Prime Minister.
McDonald?
Yeah, that's his name. Sorry, I just got a block on it. Yeah, so Prime Minister J. McDonald, he had this plan for us that we would, once we were on reserves, that they would outlaw trapping, hunting, and fishing. So of course you know that this made our communities begin to starve, because if you can't live off the land, we weren't often allowed into town without special notice or agents. How are we going to feed our children? So they offered rations to the reserves, and you've heard the story before, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. It's the 5 poisons, as we call them. They were all white foods. They were literally flour, which is white, and it's been bleached, and all of its minerals often stripped from it. Salt, sugar, the major one that's caused so much suffering in our community, and there's a way through it. So it's not that I'm going to bring you bad news. I intend to bring you good news, because all of the plants are among us, and all of the foods we need to reach out to, we can get them. If you don't have them in your own backyard, you can actually grow them in containers, and that's part of the work I do through a business called Minikan. Minikan means the seed, Minikan, Minikan, the seed. And Minikan, what it does is it teaches you how to grow plants in urban settings like this, because a lot of us don't have backyards. We just have maybe a window and some sunlight, and so you can container grow that way. So there's a lot of different things you can grow within your own realm of your small apartments, your large apartments, or wherever you live, or community gardens, which there are plenty in the city to connect with. And right now, because of the pandemic, a ton of people's focus, of course, is shifted to food. And so it should have been there anyway, because that's the whole thing. if we don't have nourishment, how do we survive? And if we just take our nourishment for granted, we know that it's not always going to be there. And that's also what's happening. We saw many stores running out of food, and we have to recognize that we need that relationship. We had such an incredible, wonderful, loving, powerful relationship, a really intelligent and reciprocal relationship with the land before. Some of us still have that, but some of us, we've had to come into urban communities, and it's very difficult to understand what those things are. And often, even if you are living on the land where you're virtually out of the cities, you may not have access to someone who can help you relearn the things or reclaim the stuff that we all once knew. So it's important to express that we're all learning. These are things that I'm going to continue learning until the day that I go into the spirit world. And right now, I still feel like a little wee baby in this area, even though I have been studying these things for 20 years. And at this time, what I'm going to share with you, I talked to you about the flour and how we had different flours. So I'm working with all different kinds of flours right now. I work with sorghum. I work with arrowroot. I work with, I'm trying to find cattail. So I'm telling you that's the most important ingredient I'm trying to locate and figure out how to make a flour, because working in catering, of course, they need a lot of it. So even if I found cattails and I knew how to harvest them and create that flour, I would have to find a huge source of them in order to provide it in catering. So that's a goal. How will we do that in the very near future? Well, we're focused on it right now because there seems to be a lot more time on our hands than there was previous to when COVID got announced. So as most of you know, NishDish is temporarily closed. There's no way for me to make it feasible to bring people into the restaurant to feed people, because people can't come into the restaurants, it's not currently allowed. And also, the only way NishDish ever survived was our large catering clientele based, and that's all based on the school system. So universities, colleges, different learning institutes, certainly not for profit. It's all the places that had large amount of people going to them, where you could do orders of 20, orders of 40, orders of 100, orders of 1,000. This is how the business, including the restaurant, was kept going. So as soon as COVID happened, of course, we had to close down very quickly. So there is a contingency plan. I'd love it very much if you went to it, even looked at it on GoFundMe. There's a GoFundMe. We have a goal of trying to reach $80,000. We're currently halfway there. That's what the community has supported our journey to bring back the Marketeria. So the Marketeria, which we had as a very small version in the restaurant, will actually become an expanded area. And when we can come into the public domain, release a place to bring in all that Indigenous product, and we'll be able to do a grocery shop there. So that's a very exciting next journey of NishDish. And for all of you that can contribute to it, whether it be $5 or more, you know that it's going through the cause of NishDish, the gardens, Minikin, all the different projects I'm going to share with you today. So this plant right here that I'm holding, this plant here is called Scouring Rush, or some of you know it as horsetail. This plant has changed my life, literally. This you make a tea from. So you can see that it's really quite dry. I'm going to hold it up close there. And you can see these little segments. They're like a white segment here, these notches. So here's something so beautiful and fascinating is our ancestors, they knew everything about these plants. This is one of the oldest plants on Mother Earth. And of course, we know the first one is in our teachings, we were told that asema, or tobacco, or sema, is the very first plant that the Anishinawbe were gifted in order to keep their agreements with Creator and with creation in Kichinganadu. And that is for, of course, giving thanks. And in some ceremonies, we would commune with that plant by smoking it. But most often, we would give that plant as a gift for the things that we're taking from and we're asking them. So when I asked for this plant and I went to get it, I put down my tobacco and I prayed, and then I received this plant. I harvested this plant, I brought it home. And then, so if you did a cross section of this plant, you would see it looks just like the human bone. So that essentially is what this plant is for. It supports bone health. It supports joint health. So all you people suffering with arthritis, this plant is a fantastic plant for that. Now there's two plants that are horsetail. One of them has a spindly kind of like, I don't know, like a spindly circle spine at all the joints. That's not the plant you want. So if you see this plant, you want the one that's straight up like this. It's just a brighter green than this because this is dried out. And it's dried out because I'm going to use it to make tea with. And the tea is very simple. In all medicines, if you should know, it's quite simple. You're going to boil the water first. Don't boil the plant. You only steep the plant. And the longer you can steep it, the better. But I often begin to drink it. Like, so I boil the water, say it's a liter, and I break up the plants. You can break this plant just like this. Break it into small pieces if you like that. Or you can cut it. If you want to use scissors, you can cut it. And you drop this plant in there after you turn down the water from boiling, and you let it steep there for many hours. And as the tea gets more yellow or a brown, darker brown color, then you know you've made it quite strong. No contraindications to this, unlike Western medicine. You're going to be able to drink pots and pots of this and never have anything side effects happen to you. This medicine's really, really important. You've heard Joseph Pitawanakwit talk about this medicine. Joseph's actually the one who showed me how to pick this medicine about, I think, 3 years ago. Maybe it was 4, but it was up at the Wiki Powwow, and I really give thanks and shout out to Joseph Pitawanakwit for all of his knowledge and his gifts for this plant particularly, and many others that I've learned quite a lot from Joseph through. So it's really important to share all our gifts and share our knowledge. And the gift that I'm trying to bring to you today, or I am bringing to you today, is our relationship with plants. Because as many of our teachers tell us, it wasn't long ago. It's not a long, long time ago. I mean, I want you to think about this. I'm standing here today, 52 years old. When I was 12 years old, I knew my great-grandmother, and she was 92. And when she was a child, Catherine Cucci lived in a teepee. I saw the photographs. That's not that long ago. That's my mom, her mother, Beatrice Whiteduck, and Beatrice Whiteduck's mother, Catherine Cucci, as a child, lived on the land that way. That's like literally 4 generations ago, right? Me, my mother, Beatrice, and Catherine. So we don't have to be under the false impression that these things were so long ago that we can't possibly reclaim the knowledge. The knowledge is right here with us. These were teas we drank every day. So what we've been taught nowadays in our contemporary fast-paced lives is that we wait till we get sick and then we go try to treat the ailment. What you want to do is drink this tea regularly, then you're not going to get sick. So what I'm talking about is medicines for cold. Drink some mullein tea. So if you know the plant mullein, if you're gardeners and you have access to it, drink that tea now. Drink antivirals right now. If you know what I'm talking about, antivirals would be like elderberry, lemon balm, hyssops. There are different plants that have antiviral properties. So they're going to do is build your immune system so that you don't get sick. This is the point. Our people went for long periods of time and we worked really hard hours, and you know how hard it is to live on the land. If you've done it, even gone fishing out for a couple of days and not being able to sleep in your bed and sleep in a tent, or however you do that camping style. If it's not glamping, then you know that it's actually quite taxing on the body. And maybe back in the day, perhaps it wasn't as, because it was our life. This was the way that we lived. But nowadays, we need to return to the knowledge of these plants, because these plants have a special relationship with us. And as Gitche Manitou told us, we have a covenant with the animals, we have a covenant with the plants, we have a covenant with the land, and that's to respect and honor them just like the water. And all things have a ceremony. So when you go to get your plants, please remember to put down your sema and pray and talk to that plant. And one of the most powerful things I can share with you, even though I cannot speak Anishinawbe Moan fluently, you get to learn the name of the plant. Winivanushk, that's the name of this plant. There are 2 other ways to say it. But when I go out, I call out to this plant to say hello. Winivanushk, and I have a conversation. And then I sit and I listen. and I try to hear what the plant world is communicating to me, because they were here thousands of years before we arrived, and they know us. They know us just like you've heard the teaching of the water. They know us by name. They know who I am. And the teaching is that I've learned about this is that the plants will grow. If you've got a little patch of land around where you're living, the plants are growing right up to where you are, because those are the plants you actually need to be consuming to take care of yourself. So if you're looking around and you begin to learn about plant identification, which is get some books, get some teachers, find other people who are interested in gardening, because it is really literally only going to benefit you. It's only going to benefit your life and make your life richer and more wholesome, because you're going to get so excited. Each time you walk outside, you're going to be like, wow, this tree, I know about this tree now, and I understand how its buds work. I understand whether it's alternate or opposite. I understand all of the gifts it gives me. So I started back earlier, just very quickly, when we were having a bit of a mic issue. I started talking about the birch bark, because you just think about the birch bark and how much it's offered the Anishinawbe people and so many nations. Birch grows in a lot of places, not really densely throughout all of Canada, but grows in a lot of our different nations. And if you think about birch bark, then you know that it created our shelters, our wigwams. It's water resistant, water repellent, so we used it to make our own shelters. We use it as a fire starter, so it's really good, excuse me, create fire. We use it for writing, about the birch bark scrolls, that we communicated our own language on the birch bark. And if you learned a little bit more about it, there are birch bark biters, which just really excites me. I just think it's so fascinating that our people and our ancestors, and even not that long ago, I think there's still a few left, but really need to find them. So I'm going to ask you, pray for the birch bark biters. Our prayer is so powerful, and as we all pray collectively for one thing, you can make it happen. That is the way that prayer works. When we communicate together and we talk about our intention and we ask Creator for help, if you pray and you can actually help the things that you need to help in your life. Prayer is really powerful. It helps us be able to process what it is that we need, and it helps us to be able to become humble and recognize that not everything we can do by ourselves, but prayer we can do. We can do almost always, and we can get in that place where we're looking and open to the universe to ask Creator what it is that I need and how can I get the help that I need. And so in this case, I'm talking about the birch bark biters because I understand that there's only one or two left. Maybe there's a few more. If you know a birch bark biter, or you know someone who knows someone, because we know that's how it works, send the smoke signals, because I'm looking for that person. I want to understand how this art is done. The birch bark biting is a process of actually knowing how to bite birch bark, and we created art on them, which we often taught during our time of the big spirit moon. During the time when we were teaching over the winter season, we were often teaching the children about these things like birch bark biting, and teaching artwork and doing basically shadow storytelling with the birch bark pieces that would have this elaborate artwork put into them. And it's not all. Think of all those things I've already talked about, but now about the birch bark, but also you can tap a birch bark tree. So if you haven't tapped the birch bark tree, completely go for it. It's the most incredible medicine. Make birch syrup from it. It doesn't flow as quickly as the sugar maple, but certainly you get all this incredible medicine. And you know what I found is it tastes like winter mint. Like it's got this incredible after flavor of this minty, kind of like the red winter berry that you see all over the ground when you're out on the land and where the birch tree is. So we know that they're interconnected, right? We're talking about our interconnectedness with the plants and how food is medicine for the spirit. So starting at the very beginning, where we're talking about plants, this plant, of course, has healed a lot of the bone problems I've had. It continues to heal me. You have to drink the stuff for a long time. Don't think it's like a Band-Aid and it fixes things overnight. These are successions and progressions of time because we're very hard on our bodies. And if you've been in a car accident or been hit by one, or much less by a bus, then you know that you've done severe damage to your body. You've experienced great injury, and your body needs all kinds of help. So it'll take a lot of years, but you see that I'm standing now, and every now and then I just kind of sit myself tilting onto a bench so that I can have some support and not be standing all the time. Now, this plant, along with willow, I'm certain that you've heard about willow. You see the willow tree. There's a specific willow tree you want. It's red willow or white willow, particularly the white willow, which is a little bit more accessible. And you have to learn how to get that. But if you don't know how to harvest it, there are tea companies, there are medicine companies, and of course, Joseph Pitawanakwut has one with his partner, and they have a business called Creator's Garden. And you probably heard Joe speak on this on Grandmother's Voices, or on one of the many talks that have been happening very recently, because I have seen them a couple times recently. So willow is the other really important plant. Many of them are very important, but what I'm saying about is pain and bone health, because connective tissue is how you get, your cartilage wears down. This plant helps the support of those tissues rebuild, and it helps fractures. It helps your bones heal, and it helps hair. It helps skin. But particularly, these are the focuses of it. So if you've got pain, that means you have inflammation. If you have inflammation, we want you to take willow tea. And willow tea, not only is it really a wonderful smell, it tastes delicious. It tastes like you're going home. You drink that tea and you just feel so incredible about that plant and about your life. You're just like, this tea is incredible. How could this tea taste so incredible? So I'm asking you, find the willow. If you know how to locate it, there's a bunch of different herb companies here. But if you have a friend that's Indigenous that has a business, get that medicine from them, because you're not only supporting them, but of course, this is going back to our ancestral practices. These are things that we were all doing. At one time, we had whole camping ceremonies. All of our families would get together and we would go harvest one medicine to create it for all of our relations. So remember, these are things we did. Just like you've seen maple syrup or maple sugar camps, we were doing that with the plants too. We weren't just doing it with maple syrup. Sometimes we would tap hundreds of trees together as a massive family, and then we would have the medicine from the plant, from the trees as syrup for all kinds of things. And if you know that we also use those birch bark buckets for containers to carry that syrup, wet and dry ingredients. So one more thing, we say thank you, Chinigwech, to the wigwas, that is the birch tree, because it's given us all those gifts. And so, of course, we had a relationship with that tree. We talked to that tree just like we talk about the stories of Winnebago or Nanabojo. So if you get an opportunity to learn about our famous half spirit and half human guide who Creator sent us, Winnebago talks about all these plants and how we name them, because Winnebago was sent to the land to not only be our guide and remind us of our relationship with Creator and our agreement with Creator for the 7 fires, but Winnebago went around and named. He was the namer of all things, so he gave everything a name, and that's how the birch tree got wigwas. And Winnebago has a whole story to tell us about each plant. So that's how I love to learn. And if you've seen the book Nanabojo, The Trails of Nanabojo by Isaac Murdoch, what a book. Contact Isaac, get that book. It's incredible. I bought 8 of them and I'm waiting for a few more because I want to give that book to everybody I know. I've learned so much from it, and it's really like an awe-inspiring tales that are in there. And so this is the Scouring Rush or horsetail, and this plant is going to help a lot of people who can get access to that plant. So my relationship with that plant, as you see on the standing here. I'm standing a lot better than when I was in 2013, and all the years that followed that up until now because of that plant. And of course, I've done all kinds of physio, but it's been a real hard journey back. And those are the things you learn on your journey. We face all kinds of obstacles in our lives, and we make choices about what can I do to overcome this obstacle, or what can I do to accept the obstacle I now am faced with, and how will I continue to live in a good way. I love sharing books, and out of the corner of my eye, I see this most fantastic book by the wonderful grandfather and uncle Edward Benton Benai, and many of you know how incredible this man was. He wrote this book, the Mishomis book. The teaching I got from Grandma Pauline is you read this 7 times, this book. And I think I'm on my 4th time. I think I'm going to read it my whole life to understand it all. But wow, what a story to learn that we migrated for a very, very, very long period of time, all the way from the East Coast to Madeline Island, which is near Sault Ste. Marie. So get this book and learn about your culture and get your knowledge keeper. So we're going to talk about knowledge keepers now. There are so many people. I've talked about Joseph. I've talked about Mark. And I've talked now about Grandma Pauline. I want to talk about Renee Hill. Grandma Renee, I met her at the OFIFC years ago when I worked there. I've had the opportunity to meet her again recently. And I just love to see the grandmas on this collective. This has really, really been the heart of my life. I have to tell you that through all the journey of my mother's life, although it was taken in 2002 in the car accident, my mother is the one who gave me that sense of love and that sense of the desire to love others, to share that. My mother had this, she had this way of always seeing, you know, that there's a sort of a cliche way of saying the glass is half full. That wasn't my mom. She was always looking at how beautiful the sun was setting, not that the day was coming to an end, but the sun was so gorgeous as it set, and then so thankful for the next day. So I feel really, really grateful that I got this, I think it's like an enormous sense of sharing and love in building the community. So through one of our elders, who is Jim Dumont, and one of his mentees, who is also a really great teacher, she came to one of our groups, which is called TIBA. We run a group that's now a not-for-profit called Toronto Indigenous Business Association. And that business association is trying to build a whole community, a hub that involves all of the things that Indigenous people need that we're so lacking here in this massive city. And that's like housing, that's like business development. We want to do it through business development. So we're helping all the entrepreneurs on there grow their businesses in different ways and coming together as a community to support one another and show each other what we can do as a collective. We want to create our own credit union, for example, so that all of our money goes into a credit union that there's membership, and we have control of what that supports. Because as many of you may know, our money is in where it's supposed to be at banks, but then a lot of these banks are supporting things that are like companies that are fracking, companies that are, you know, extracting from the land, oil sands, you name it, uranium, all of it, they're supporting that. So isn't it okay, right? It's okay if we have a say where our money goes. So that's one of the things TIBA is working on. But what I was talking about is Lenore Kijik. I hope I have the right name right now. It's Keitha's auntie, and she came in because she learned from Jim Dumont, our grandfather Jim Dumont, who is a wonderful elder and teacher in our lives, about the clan system. So sharing with you today that Mark Thompson gave me the clan system in ceremony of the shake tent. And the Mink clan goes with the Martin people. So there's the Bear clan, Hoof clan, Fish clan, Thunderbird clan, Martin clan. Who am I missing? Missing 2 more. Let's see them. Oh, Loon clan and the big tall one, the Crane clan. And the Crane clan, if you begin to learn about the clan system, you find out they had different responsibilities. It's really exciting. Because when you find out, wow, I've got this clan, what am I supposed to be doing with it? I looked at my life and realized I'm doing what my clan is supposed to be doing. In the Jim Dumont teachings of this clan, the Martin clan people they're social entrepreneurs, basically. They build the economy of our communities. That's what they were always doing. Now, back in the day, I might have been out foraging for the best location of wild rice. I sure hope I was, because I am now. I'm trying to find wild rice. Wild rice used to be all over the Great Lakes and all the low-level lakes, all over the place here in our people. It was one of their main foods. Now we can't find it anywhere. It's in a couple of communities, but there's not enough of it to feed the masses of us that need it. And that's because we've destroyed the lakes. We've blocked them up, we've dammed them up, we run our boats and do our engines and everything through the water and destroy the wild rice. And many of you have heard of our brother James Waytung, who is on his life journey of protecting and regrowing the rice. And we want to pray for that journey too, because the work that James and his family and allies are doing is so important to bring back the Minoman, because they say that the Anishinawbe people are the wild rice people. That's what brought us here. If you read the tales of the stories of our teacher, Winnebajo, you know that he brought us at the time of starvation to the wild rice. He brought us to that plant, and he found that plant through a duck or a bird that had settled near the fire on a kettle. And when he went to the kettle, he found the wild rice inside there boiling and realized it was a source of food. And then he started to think, where did that come from? How did it get in there? And he realized the bird had dropped it there. So that was Creator sending the message that there is food, it's on the water, and you need to go find it. So that's the real nutshell of that. That story or that teaching would have been told, who knows, maybe in 4 hours or 4 days back in the day, so that we would remember how important it is in every detail of it, and how we migrated following those trails of Minoman to the Finger Lakes. And the Finger Lakes are the Great Lakes, of course, and that's how we got here. And then you can start talking about the one dish, one spoon wampum, and how important it is to show that our people communed. More than 24 nations came together, 24 different Indigenous nations, long before settlers came here and colonizers came here. We came together as a community to support one another and recognize there's a lot of incredible stuff here and incredible bountiful food. What are we going to do about it? When are we going to stop fighting with one another about whose wild rice patch this is, whose fishing patch is that, etc.? We came together. We created law. We created our own law. We created wampum, and we shared that story of the one dish, one spoon wampum to take care responsibly of the land all around the Great Lakes and share what was in there equally amongst all of us. So I love to talk about that. Of course, I love to bring in a wampum teacher, and there are many wampum teachers. So if you have that opportunity, find the wampum teachers and bring them in, because that's how we need to learn. We need to learn from those knowledge keepers. Like Elder Jan Longboat is one of the teachers that I've learned about the three sisters, and I love to talk about the three sisters. These three sisters is one of the most powerful lessons and powerful teachings we can ever give or convey. And one of the reasons of that, and there's so many reasons, these three plants, these three sisters, talk a bit about Indigenous agroecology right now. And that's because when you grow these three plants together, which we do, we have gardens. I've told you about the not-for-profit Ojibikon Indigenous Cultural Network. It's all about land-based teaching. It's all about creating urban Indigenous gardens and trying to bring our people back to those gardens, bringing in the knowledge keepers and doing Indigenous agroecology, the way our ancestors were planting food here for thousands and thousands of years before anyone else ever came here. And why is that so important? We had learned a way through ceremony, and there's always ceremony. You've heard me say that earlier. There's always ceremony. Even when you're eating, make your little spirit plate. You know what your spirit plate is. Put a little bit aside. Put your sema down on there and put it out on the land. If you have a fire, put it in the fire. But put it out on the land for your loved ones. My mother, as I told you, have passed. If you see the film The Edible Indian, you can see that for free online. In the Edible Indian, I'm in there, but so is my auntie, who's an elder. Name is Lorraine Liberty in North Bay. She's my mother's sister. She talks about making that spirit plate for my mother. And my mother loved new potatoes. And so she puts that on the spirit plate. We know that. My mother also loved coffee. So you see me pour, a little bit of Timmy's on the ground once in a while for her, because I know she loves that. And that's what it is. That relationship, they're there. Our ancestors, our loved ones who've gone before us, they're right there. They're just behind a thin veil in another dimension. And they're there to take care of us and to help guide us in our journey. We have to be open to asking for that. And that's why when I talk about communicating with the plants, some people would say, "What are you talking about? Plants don't talk. What are you talking about?" You can't be afraid to understand that this is a reality. Our people understood the natural world in a far greater way than we're willing to understand right now. And all we're doing is going back and saying, yeah, my grandmother or my grandfather or my uncle or my great-granddad or however we knew had these different ways of teaching us. And we remember that. That's inside us. Even for some of those loved ones that went before we were born, we have some of their teachings. They talk about that as blood memory. That's inside of us. That's inside of us. And that's why it's so important to try and learn your history. If your history's lost, if you got scooped and you got adopted and you got totally dislocated and you can't find your people, and you know that you're Indigenous, you know that you're a Native person, you got to go back to the teachers. You got to find those teachings. And I wish if somebody's out there and you could create a really, really large conference somehow to bring all of the ones who got dislocated from their communities together. So like an adoption conference or a conference of how you want to call it, we bring everybody back together again to try and understand and heal those traumas and bring our people back into our communities, because so many people got disconnected, and you lose that connection, and you're busy trying to find yourself. And this is how I found myself. I had a lot of help. I had Wanda Whitebird, was the very first traditional teacher I saw in about the year 2000, I believe. And she led me to Mark Thompson somewhere in 2001 or 2002. And that relationship carried till 2009. There's Geraldine Stand-Up. There's Marjorie Naganash. There's so many people, Isaac Day. There's so many people on this journey. I can keep going and going. They all share different things with me. Take the good stuff from our teachers. Not everyone's going to be perfect, but if you're listening and you're praying, you're going to get some good teachings from every single person. People have an innate goodness in them. Some people are still lost, and maybe they shouldn't be working with them, working with the community, but your heart usually knows that if you're not a good match for someone, that person may actually be able to connect with someone else and help them. The main thing is pray and look for that. Ask, take your tobacco, pray with it. Ask, I'm trying to find this, and put it down on the land. And this is how you begin to find out what's the journey you're going on. So the clan system is super important. We all had some type of, some of them were called societies, some of them were called dodems, some of them had different names. We had specific connections to how we did our spiritual governance of our communities. It's very, very important to reconnect with them. Learn your colors. I love wearing the shirt because this is a ribbon shirt. I was gifted this by my former partner, who is now passed. Her name is Cynthia Bird. Cynthia Bird I love very dearly. She did a lot of work in our community way back in the 90s. As one of the first people to be going into agencies and trying to bring sexual health knowledge and information and protection to our community at a time when nobody even talked about those things, and they would ask her to leave. And now you go in everywhere and you see pamphlets and you see condoms and you see all kinds of things now, because it's really important to take care of ourselves and be informed and be knowledgeable about your physical health, your emotional health, your sexual health, your spiritual health, your psychological health. All of those things we have to take care of. And I think one of the very important things to start with is what you eat and how you think about that food. So that are some of the things that I'm sharing with you today is what is the food we're having? I've got a little bit of tea here. Now, this is black tea, but I drink all kinds of medicine teas. I drink the Winnie Banusk. That's the horsetail, right? I drink that tea. I drink the willow. Oh, I love the willow. I will drink mullein like I talked about. I drank yarrow the other night. Yarrow is a really good one for all kinds of things. And again, you can look up this information and see what it is. You'll find that almost all plants have no contraindications. You would have to take so much of them, it would be impossible for you even to function before you're going to have a contraindication. And that contraindication may be that, your bladder's so swollen because you drank so much, you're just going to have to pee for hours. Because some plants, they're diuretic. They'll help you pee, and that's a good thing. But you have to replenish that. You have to replenish that with drinking a lot of water. So if you're drinking a plant that does that, then you'll know. You'll know, and you know that you have to replace it with water. So one of the things I want to share, one of the last things I want to share before we show a few pictures of some of the projects I've talked about. So I told you that I'm Chef Johl Whiteduck Ringuette. I've operated NishDish Marketeria and Catering since 2005. We opened a restaurant in 2017. It had the largest grand opening in the history of Toronto, as we were told and documented by the CBC. It won Best Caterer in 2019. And it's also asked to be on a program, Master Chef Canada, where I got to help host and bring in a bunch of our really talented native chefs throughout the land. And that was an episode that was called, I think, Bounties of the Earth. And I got to focus and debut the white corn, because that's what's in that Three Sisters that I was talking about earlier. That Three Sisters with those three plants, as I was trying to talk a little bit about, those three plants, those Three Sisters, of course, there's a whole teaching. You should hear the teaching from an elder, and the true teaching of it is quite a long teaching. The sisters all have a responsibility to one another, and they all have gifts, and they share that to one another. And there's a full teaching around that. I'm not an elder. I'm just bringing you information as a community member. And I'm a teacher, but I'm a teacher of the food and of Indigenous food sovereignty. And that's my journey, and I like to share my journey about that. So those three sisters, our ancestors, figured out exactly how to plant those three plants together. We're talking about the corn, the beans, and the squash. You plant those together the right way at the right time. And as Jan Longboat has taught us, it's the third week in a very specific moon. In our 13-moon calendar, the third week in May. And every year it varies a little bit, and you have to look for that specific that specific moon phase of exactly when that first corn goes down. Now you plant the corn, and you plant that in ceremony. You need to drum and sing and learn the planting ceremonial songs. We had many of them. We bring in people from 6 nations. We brought in Kitty Lickers and a group of her companions who are teachers to us, who taught us a couple of songs around the teachings of the garden singing ceremonies. And we drum and we commune with the soil, and we ask those seeds for their guidance to help plant them. So that corn goes down first. If you know a little bit about gardening, you don't put down the beans and the squash right away. And the reason you don't do that is beans grow really quickly, and they will grow right around the corn very quickly and actually smother it. So you've got to wait a few weeks, sometimes 3 weeks even, until the corn is at least like a foot high. Wait for it to be a foot high or a little bit more. Then you plant the beans, and then you plant the squash. And the squash and beans, they can be planted at the same time usually. Now, that corn sister is a pole plant, so she's going to grow really tall. But if you know a little bit about corn, corn needs a whole bunch of nitrogen. And sometimes there's not enough nitrogen in the soil for corn for her to grow as tall as she wants to grow and be as vibrant as she wants to be. So sister beans has a whole bunch of nitrogen. When you plant sister beans, she shoots all of her nitrogen into the soil, and she helps sister corn grow. But guess what Sister Bean needs? Sister Beans needs a pole to climb so she can get all the sunlight because she's a pole climber. That's what her plant does. She needs to be able to climb up high and absorb all the sunlight from different areas. And then we have the squash. And the squash, what the squash does for those other sisters is squash has great big giant leaves. And that protects the soil from drying out because it creates shade. And if you know about squash, it's actually extremely prickly. It actually hurts your hands if you try and go in there and grab the plant. So that sister squash that's growing around and that great big beautiful gorgeous vine is protecting her other two sisters, creating shade so that the soil stays moist so that they can grow together harmoniously into their full fruition, and also keeping out predators. So you see how important their relationship, their symbiotic relationship with each other is. You go a step further and you discover that our ancestors understood that relationship with the land, that when you plant those three companion plants together, they support soil health. So if you just plant one by itself, it's going to extract from the soil. If you plant the right plants, that's indigenous agroecology. All of our ancestors knew about this. In this city alone, there were gargantuan, massive gardens here before other communities came here on their boats. There was massive gardens here. And the Anishinawbe people and all different nations had major gardens throughout this area of the Great Lakes. And of course, we know that the Haudenosaunee are the corn people. And they stayed more stationary for long periods of time and grew immense gardens. So the seed keeping is very important. If you've got seeds, you have a responsibility to them. You can't let them just sit around. You have to use them or give them away. And if you use them, then you have the whole responsibility of taking care and nurturing that plant and harvesting that food. So if you go on Minicon, which I talked about a little bit earlier, and I'll put in some of the website locations, you can find out a lot of these things. We have balcony gardening workshops. We have container growing workshops. We have all kinds of different workshops you can take online and participate in to learn how to do these things. We have you can see part of our seed library here, and we've got a larger one coming where we're keeping all the seeds. So we've got like basically a seed orchard where we're growing plants, and we make sure that we keep those seeds so we can give them to other people, and they can continue to grow that knowledge and keep that plant history alive. So I told you that some people came to NishDish and they brought these 500-year-old seeds, and they were the corn, beans, and squash. And that's how I planted that first garden. It's still there. We continue to plant it because then we created a not-for-profit called Ojibikon. So those youth came to my culinary arts program at NishDish, and they cleared the land, and they planted these seeds that I was talking about in 2017. And that culinary arts program was called Ojibikon. After the program came to its end, we then needed people to keep up those gardens that we had created. So we got the community together, we created a board of directors, we began to write grants, and now we have a not-for-profit. And currently there are 3 new postings for that not-for-profit. So if you're someone who's interested in gardening or has a program management, or there's a cultural team lead, if you're someone who loves to work with people and understands your culture and really wants to share your knowledge about the seeds in the gardens, or if you have some of these things, please look for that job position. It's on Charity Village. It's posted all over the place on Good Works. It's on Facebook, Urban Indigenous. It's in many places. So there's also a cultural team lead, and there's a program administrative facilitator. So these 3 positions are about to be filled. So please look and send in your resumes if you're interested in those positions to work in this incredible Indigenous gardening not-for-profit, the first of its kind, that's bringing our people back and bringing in all our knowledge keepers. And there's so many knowledge keepers. So I could spend a long time listening to people who have really helped me. I hope that you remember when people help you and you learn a teaching, that you try to cite them for that teaching so that we know where you learned that from and that you're sharing that honor of that individual giving you that great teaching. Today, I'd like to turn our attention to a few of the pictures now that are from the gardens. And I'm hoping that Jody, if you're there, you can bring up a picture for us, and I can do a bit of a discussion about what we were doing with NishDish when we had the hub. We created actually 8 different projects. One of them is about the gardens, and that is Ojibwakan Indigenous Cultural Network. Ojibwakan means the roots, and we have a program within it called Ojibwakans, which is a program for little roots, because Ojibwakans means little roots. And you'll see in my hand there, that's a bunch of wild leeks. And oh, I love wild leeks. Those are hand-picked from Beausoleil First Nations. Shout out to the people from Beausoleil First Nations for providing us with this incredible food. We got this from Forbes Food, but they get it from our people in Beausoleil. And these onions, well, they have a name too. So you learn the name, right? And I'm not going to say it right, but I'm going to give it a shot. The onion is called, much like the city Chicago. So that's how I remember the word, because there are a bunch of onions around Chicago, and that's how it got its name. It actually means something like the smelly, stinky plant or something, and it's called chikag. Chikag, that's how you say onion in our language, and that's how Chicago got its name. So chikag. We can go towards the next photograph. So we talked about Ojibwakan. This, of course, is my cousin, who's a really wonderful film director from Ryerson. Her name is Cassandra or Cass Gardner. She actually did that film I was talking about earlier. If you want to look up that film, you can find it on Vimeo. It's free. It's called The Edible Indian, and that film is about three. I think there are 3 food providers. The chef Ronnie Otter Eyes, who used to work for Tia Bannock. There's my auntie, Elder Lorraine Liberty, cooking up some moose, talking about spirit plates, and then there's yours truly on it. So I do really enjoy seeing that film. It's from 2013. It's a short one, but totally a wonderful film to see the Cass Gardner put together. And then next we have the moccasins, but you know what those moccasins are doing? And you probably can't quite see it, but we brought the youth from Ojibwakan Culinary Arts Program out to that reserve that's right outside the city, east of here. We brought them there, and Diane Thomas Smoke, thank you to your family, Diane Thomas Smoke, who brought us to her family home, and they showed us the ricing ceremony. So those moccasins are on one of the youth, and they're dancing. They're doing the ceremony of the wild rice, and they actually dance on the rice on a canvas. So they're breaking the hull from the shaft of the rice, a really important part of the ceremony. And when you participate in this ceremony, it changes your relationship with wild rice. You begin to understand after you see it harvested. You see what it takes to harvest it. You see what it takes to parch it. You put it in the big cauldron, and you have to stir it on the fire for many, many hours so that it heats up and it makes that hull outside of it hard. Then it's cooled off. It's put into this canvas that you see here, and then our people start the ceremony of the dance. This is so important. We know that our songs and our singing and our prayer are all about ceremony. And there you see it. That's part of the ceremony of the wild rice. So important to know how that changed us. When we saw the amount of rice we got after the dance happens, you throw the rice up. They call it winnowing. You throw the rice up on the big canvas, and the wind separates that soft hull from the actual rice, and then the rice lands back into the blanket. So very, very briefly, I'm telling you something so profound that changed my life about my relationship with wild rice. We love the wild rice. It's just like we said, they are a being. All things are a being in our teachings, as we know. And we love that person that wild rice, and it's so full of something like 52 different minerals and vitamins. So it's essential to have it in our diets. Just like the sunchokes, we might get to sunchokes, but we'll keep going on some of the pictures just to share you some visuals. Here's the first garden at Ash Bridges Estate. That garden is still there. You can go and see it this summer after the planting season. You'll see it. We'll start it in May again this year. It's an incredible Three Sisters, and I actually do have some documentary footage on it that you'll see. You see the young ones helping us plant, and this is so important to have our little ones and our sisters and our brothers and have the whole community there. Some 35 people at minimum were there to help us plant this, and it went in different series of planting them, because they told you come back at different stages. And remember, we brought in the knowledge keepers. So the women, we need the women to help lead our ways. And you hear me saying that, and this has nothing to do with sexism. So criticize me if you like. The women are our leaders. This is the way our communities were run before. Certainly our men make decisions, but there are many specific and incredible times we need to go to the women. And people ask me all the time, how have you managed to do all these different things? I didn't do them. I'm simply like a mediator. I go and ask the community, can you help me with this? What do you think about this idea? Oh, you like this idea? Can you help me with it? So we start the gardens. We teach a class. We started a collective called Red Urban Nation Artist Collective, and the community is doing that. All these artists get together and they paint these murals. The community, Ojibwakan, that's all staffed by our members, and they create these gardens throughout the city. And they have a really incredible one at Crawford Lake Sanctuary. And again, we brought out the knowledge keepers to do that. This is a shout out to Irpi Pine too. Irpi Pine is an incredible woman, incredible farmer, an Ojibwe farmer, teacher, and mentor of mine who spends her life farming. And her mother, of course, Lila Pine, who I love very dearly, a professor at Ryerson for many years. And this is with Irpi's help and her children. This is part of the process of creating this garden. And of course, Kitty Lickers and all of the women that came from Six Nations to bring those songs to us. And what do we have next to be really, to share a few more things, and then I'm not sure if we break for, and there's the red flint corn. You see, that came right out of that garden. I just love to see that. Oh, the mandamin, yeah. And that garden there, that's the garden up at Crawford Lake Sanctuary, which is just outside of Milton there on your way to Guelph. If you get a chance, please go to this sanctuary. It's a hard time to get out on the land these days, but when the doors open for this public park, please go check this out. We have this incredible Three Sisters there, and the longhouses are there, of course. This garden here, I'm showing you the antivirals I talked about earlier. This is our Mini Khan garden, and Mini Khan, of course, is a private business between my partner and I, where we're teaching people about how to grow the food right in your own homes, or right on your balcony, or right in your little backyard, wherever there's a little area to plant, right in your window. That's what Minikan can do, is help you learn about these plants. See them all here? This is a great area at Bickford. Come down to the Bickford Center. It's a public location. It's safe to go there. You can see 17 Indigenous murals teaching and celebrating our culture. Massive murals, gorgeous murals, teaching and celebrating who we are as a people, and all the different things that we've learned, that we've been passing down through our ancestral teachings. This is a 4-part garden here. We've got a sun garden, we've got a sacred medicine garden, we've got a pollinator garden, and an herb garden. And we do all the teachings in this little garden. And it's also at 777 Bloor Street West, the Bickford Center. You can come down there and take a look at these things for yourself. You can even help us with that garden if you're interested. To learn more, we will be doing a whole lot more with the garden. And that's Bloor Street West, so you know that it's near Christie and Bloor, which is where, of course, the restaurant was. That is currently closed at this time. Maybe just a couple more if there's anything left. If not, I'm pretty much ready to, can hear my voice starting to crack up there. It's a lot of talking. You can tell I love to talk. But I'm pretty much ready to tell you I've had a great day to share a few more things with you. Of course, you've seen this book. It's Sweetgrass, and we love to share all of the knowledge of the different people who have brought us information. Breeding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and I love that book too. Hi, Jody. Hi, Sherry.
That was fantastic, Joel. And there's so much that you're doing, and bringing the community along, which is really important, because we never ever had any of these teachings either when we were younger. You know, because that was all not even talked about in the 60s or 70s. And I'm so honored and thrilled that, you know, you have mentors that are able to help you along and learn all these different things. And I've been watching Joseph too on Creator's Garden, and that guy is just so clever with everything when it comes to traditional food. And when we're talking about diabetes and what we're eating and what we put in our bodies is so important. And it's important for our own health, right? And you mentioned earlier about, you know, Indigenous people don't have the enzyme to process the flour, right?
Yeah,
really and the bannock that an awful lot of us use as one of our traditional staples, right? But we love it. To process that flour. And you know, and I know for myself and my own health, you know, I have an intolerance to wheat, so you know, I know how important it is to keep that gut healthy. You know, it's we had so many incredible comments, and thank you too, Joel, for putting, you know, the Ojibwe edible Indian and the Macan. How do you say a Minicon? Yeah, and it's just wonderful.
Oh, thank you. It's been my pleasure to be here today and just talk a little bit about. I have a lot of demos online that people can see too. If you want to learn how to create the Three Sisters, I'll often do in a couple ways. A really accessible way, say on the stovetop, and then the long way we used to do it where we were roasting it. So you bring out all those flavors of that squash and that sweet corn. And, you know, I'll talk about the white corn and the importance of the protein strains from that white corn, which is the same thing of the importance of the protein strains from game meat. You don't need a ton of game meat, but you need game meat. If you're Indigenous, you need some game meat in your diet. If you're a vegan or a vegetarian, you better find those protein strains inside that very specific white corn, because you're not going to get them anywhere else. They aren't in the other conventional ways of meat that we get. They aren't there. They've done these studies and they exist, and it's really important for us to know that so we can try to access them.
Wow.
Excuse me.
You were amazing, and I'm going to admit that I was cooking in the kitchen while you were talking, and I'm like, it just inspires and empowers, and I love you, man.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, no, I don't know how wonderful that is, but
no, it is. I'd love to hear
you
that.
inspire. Like, it's just the knowledge you have and how you take the time in everything you say to acknowledge where that information came from that you're speaking of. That in itself is a gift, to be able to, as you go, acknowledge along the way how you're sharing. And I think that that's such an important lesson for everyone, in our children and everyone. Just a reminders, you're really fabulous. And I'd like to offer another opportunity to do this segment again, because unfortunately it was staticky, and I love to do this clearer, because the farther away you are, like, I didn't notice any static. Sherry, did you? So before we go, we should kind of test that. So okay, when you're ready to move a little bit, come closer and let's figure this out before we hang up.
So
I feel like I'm hugging you now. Right?
Hello, my sister.
Yeah, I don't know.
So how is it now? How does it sound right now?
It sounds good, but I don't know if maybe it's you know, the space that was between you where you were, because right now you seem a little bit closer.
There were a few times where I was stepping forward to like try to show whatever I was holding, right? So I don't know if that's making, because the mic's right here. The mic's like off my camera, so
yeah. So I don't know if there's this. if there's a specific energy, or we just have to be in the room with you. I don't know. We have to be on
The
screen.
ghost in the machine. I didn't smudge it. I just smudged myself. So maybe I need to smudge that.
If there's one thing that I know about our culture and learnings, is that there is that space, and in that space
Yeah.
it can be filled with a lot of different energies and ancestors, and I just can't. I really, maybe I did express myself, Joel, enough, because I'm pretty easy with that. I'm easy to share my love and messages through my words. What you bring to the urban community is so very important. And not, yeah, it's just, it's really amazing. So yes, Sherry's right. There was some really great questions or messages here. There was a question from Linda near the beginning, and she had said, "How do I get a book, please?" And I think it's the first book that you had mentioned. Which book was that you spoke about? Do you remember?
It's either gonna be the woman's cookbook. You
Yes.
can get this online. I tell you, support our women, because this is what's done everything for me. And I've had that privilege. I would say I was raised by my mom with 3 sisters, so I've really lucked out in my life. I got my sisters all around me, and they keep me well. I need the women in my life too. I have an incredible partner, and I couldn't have done any of these things without my partner. My partner, who is non-Indigenous, has been assisting with all the projects we do, and Lara actually refuses to be acknowledged about it. She wants to be a supporter and show her genuine gratitude to our nations and to our people. So I love that. And my sisters, of course, who have supported me in all my journey through the restaurant. They even drive all the way here, like hours and hours away, to support me through catering, through building the restaurant and all of that. So I'm very, very fortunate, and appreciate so much. What a pleasure and an honor, Jody and Sherry, to have me here with Grandmother's Voices today. And I would love to come back. I would absolutely love to come back.
Awesome. Well, don't hang up. We'll end the broadcast, but we'll still stay in the back room and kind of talk a little bit more about what we're going to do and when we'll reschedule this, because I'd love to do another live just like this. There was so much information, and I know if my mom was watching, she'd say the static was killing me.
Oh no!
But you were so clear. It was very, very clear. So Native Indian, the book, Linda, you can pick that up. You probably just Google it, right? And I didn't see the subtitle after the Native Indian.
This is called Native Indian, and I can type it in too.
Yeah, it's called Wild Game. Okay, Wild Game.
Love Sick Lake Nations Women's Association. So if you Googled them, you're going to find this book. I've seen it online.
Okay.
So Love Sick Lake. Okay. I'm lovesick for the. Yeah.
Okay.
Really wonderful.
I'm just typing that in. And yeah.
And it's wonderful. We've had just, a person commented and said him being a Haudenosaunee chef, he was just absolutely thrilled that you were on here, and it makes me happy to see that there is more in the way of food sovereignty, right? That's what it's all about, collecting the food sovereignty. Mm-hmm.
I thank you, Sherry, that you just reminded me. I have a library of books in my kitchen of all these incredible Indigenous chefs who have written books. I could have brought them all out here. So if I come back, I'll remember to have them all ready and lined up and the names ready for people to find, because we have some incredibly gifted people across the nation who are sharing all of their knowledge, and it's a powerful thing. You start learning. You said this about diabetes. The sunchoke is a regular natural blood sugar leveler. The sunchoke is supposed to be in all of our diets. It was here, and it grows enormously when you plant it. So we'll talk more about that later too.
I just put that in just as a note. And since we're on and we're live, I'm just going to share that Grandmother's Voice got their own URL. So that's exciting.
All right.
Yeah, so we're moving on
Congratulations. Wonderful.
So this is wonderful, and we're gonna redo this again, so we're a little clearer, and we're gonna get Chef Joel sharing even more, which is so exciting. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. Please remember that tonight we have Jane Burning with us, and she's just amazing. She's an amazing woman. Next week we actually have Lyndon George, right? Sherry, that's like I'm so amazed, like so happy that he's coming for 2 days. So 2 days to speak. So wonderful. Thank you everyone for coming, and we'll see you soon.
Mm-hmm.
Oma P. Oma P, everybody. See you